Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raegan Higgins. I am the president for the Association for Women in Mathematics. Thank you for joining us today for our Communicating Employment Opportunity Series. Today we have four speakers, lovely speakers from national laboratories who will share their insights and experiences about being at those places. So thank you for joining us today on this Friday. On the screen, you will see our 2025 Student Chapter Award winners. So let's use our reaction button to celebrate how great they have done for their great recognition this year. Let them know that we're so excited for them. So Community Outreach, University of Utah, Fundraising and Sustainability from Western University, Professional Development from the University of Florida, and Scientific Excellence, University of Oregon. Hopefully that your student chapter will be represented next time. If not, how do you start a student chapter? It's easy, really easy. 3 students willing to serve as officers and 1 faculty member willing to serve as their advisor. You must commit to the diversity and inclusion and welcoming environment statements. And this is the financial piece. $100 from the department will pay for the advisor's membership and every student in the chapter. You can't beat it. Don't get your own. Get a student chapter. It's covered. So scan that QR code, take a picture of the whole thing, and start a student chapter at your university. Our lovely co-organizers are here. Please celebrate them as well. So let's give them some hand claps and some thank yous using our reaction button for the effort that they have put in to make sure that this series continues. So they're on the call. Beth is here. Judy's here. Monica's here. Sarah's here. Jasmine is here.
Sorry.
Everybody's here, right? So they're waving. Now,
Our first speaker is Sarah Chehade. So Dr. Sarah Chehade is a mathematician specializing in the foundations of quantum computing. She earned her PhD in mathematics from the University of Houston in 2021 and completed a postdoc fellowship at Ulrike National Lab right after. Alongside her academic trajectory, she has also explored a range of career paths outside of academia, including roles as a data science fellow at a software startup and as a data science in industry. Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, thanks Judy for that introduction. I'm just gonna share my screen because I prepared a couple of slides. Hopefully there are no technology glitches. Very happy to be here, very excited to be on this awesome panel. I kind of think my path to National Lab is a little unique because I really didn't know anything about National Labs for a very long time. So here's a short timeline of my academic path. I obtained my bachelor's degree from the University of Houston, and I stayed to complete my PhD also at the University of Houston. And my focus was on very pure mathematics. So I was not taking any computational mathematics courses, no optimization, no statistics. I was on the theoretical side where I was looking at functional analysis, measure theory, and topology, and those types of courses. So my beginning was a bit different. Then towards the end of my second year as a PhD student, I started working more in the quantum space. So my focus for my dissertation was about quantum information theory, which is a fancy way of saying how do we analyze the resources and estimates of information in the quantum space. And about halfway through my graduate student program, I had what I call my graduate student midlife crisis, where I felt like I was just studying a lot of very theoretical math, as beautiful and exciting as it looked. I didn't know how to apply it in the real world. I didn't know how to talk about what I've been doing the past few years to my family. And I didn't know how to get a job out of this if I didn't want to pursue a teaching and academic career. So I had a great and supportive advisor, and she helped me find this program called the Math to Industry Bootcamp, organized by the Institute for Mathematics and its Applications. And I got to participate in this 6-week boot camp which was designed for people like me who have very theoretical backgrounds but want to start thinking about more applied mathematics. So it was a crash course on optimization and statistics, and we got to learn how to program in R and Python. And it was my first exposure to data science and machine learning. And I didn't walk away as an expert in any of these things, but I walked away knowing how to learn about them, how to talk about these topics, and how to use them in my day-to-day life. And I got to do that. In my fourth year of graduate school, I did get a part-time job at a local company in Houston, and I was doing some time series analysis for them, some machine learning, and I really learned how to talk about very highly technical tools and information in a way where these, for example, business people, CEOs, CTOs can understand you. And transitioning to a national lab, being able to talk about your research that's very technical and to a very broad and general audience is a really important skill to have. And then COVID happened my last year of graduate school, and everything changed. Everyone was online, and the job market, wasn't that great. So rather than trying to be selective with the programs I was applying to, I was applying to anything I could find. And I stumbled across an ad on LinkedIn for a postdoc in the quantum computing group at Oak Ridge National Lab. And me being very naive and not knowing anything about computational sciences, I just thought, oh, quantum, I've been studying that for my PhD. Surely I can do this and handle it and work in this kind of space. That's a very naive and ambitious thing to think about myself, but I did, and somehow it worked out. But it was a very eye-opening culture shock joining a national lab. I really didn't know what the focus was at a national lab, coming from a very pure mathematical background. And I was working with a bunch of physicists who don't necessarily speak the same language as me, but at the end of the day, we're all trying to do the same thing. And so for the first part of my postdoc, I felt like a math consultant because I was talking to these physicists and these chemists and these nuclear engineers, and they're trying to understand quantum computing and the mathematical capabilities and limitations of quantum computing, and asking me questions that did actually go back to my roots in algebra and group theory and topology, which was pretty exciting, but very unexpected. Just a little bit about some of the projects I got to work on while I was a postdoc at Oak Ridge National Lab. I'm gonna go in an odd order. I'm gonna start at the bottom right box. So I worked on mathematical underpinnings of what are called variational quantum algorithms. And you can think of this as performing an algorithm partly on a quantum device, a quantum computer, and partly on a classical device, a classical computer, and basically leveraging the strengths of both these technologies to ultimately solve problems that are in the optimization spaces, for example. And in the top right box, one of the mathematical questions that people like to ask about these variational quantum algorithms is how expressive are they? Meaning, if I have some algorithm, what kind of states or unitaries is it going to generate for me? Which is important to try to find your optimal solution in whatever spaces you're in. And one other project I got to work on is actually mapping this question or this notion of expressiveness into a probabilistic framework, and just taking random walks on lattices and representing expressiveness of algorithms in a probabilistic language. So again, trying to extract these very concrete problems and bring it back to my comfortable, happy theoretical space that I can understand a bit better. And this upper left figure, this is a figure of a circuit. And in the quantum algorithm space, one technique that is used often is called trotterization. And it's a technique to approximate these massive unitaries that are very hard to simulate on classical and quantum devices. And this trauterization technique, ironically, has roots in operator theory, which is what my PhD initial studies were in. And there are these spaces called Jordan algebras, and quantum mechanics was actually formulated in the language of Jordan algebra. So I was able to pull some roots and tools from that space, this theoretical space, again, back into this very computational circuit type setting. And this last box in the bottom left corner is a figure where I got to work with some people in the National Security Office, where we talked about, okay, if we have these quantum and classical devices, how are we monitoring and measuring information spread, and how are we keeping it secure? And that it actually tied back to the things I studied for my dissertation, which are entropic functions. So a really nice full circle. My postdoc did end back in April. And since then, I've joined the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. They have a quantum center, so I'm a researcher there, and I am still a subcontractor to Oak Ridge National Lab, where I still get to work on some of these things, and new things, hopefully, in the near future. So just a couple of tidbits about national labs, because as I said earlier, I really knew nothing about them when I started. There's 17 of them across the US. They started during and after the Manhattan Project during World War II. Each national lab has its, I guess, specialty. And so coming from Oak Ridge National Lab, the specialty there is computing, where we have two of the largest and fastest, not largest, I don't know size, fastest supercomputers in the world, which is pretty cool to say. And some tidbits for you, there's lots of ways to get connected to these national labs. So all the national labs are managed, maybe that's not the right word, but associated with the Department of Energy, the DOE. They are the big funders for these national labs. And this link provides links up to all of the 17 national labs and where you can find opportunities to get involved rather than trying to search each one of them individually, where you'll find job ads, internships for high school students, for undergraduate students, and for graduate students, and fellowships. The best time to do internships at these national labs is during the summer, where you get to work with the researchers and postdocs there on problems that they're actually trying to solve. They do have semester-long programs if you have, if you get to work with someone at the lab and have them as like a joint, a dual advisorship. These opportunities are not just for US citizens. Some projects and programs may require US citizenships, but some might not, so it's not limited in that sense. And if you're a faculty, there are faculty collaborations and resources for you at National Labs as well. I think that's all I have. Here's my contact information and my LinkedIn page. If you would like to connect, I'm happy to do so. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. Okay, if you have any question for Sarah, I guess you can put out the Q&A part. Next up, we have Zichao Wendy D. So Wendy is a computational mathematician at Argonne National Lab with a joint appointment between Mathematics and Computer Science Division and X-ray Science Division. Wendy's research focus is on generalization of multi-level methods for solving optimization problems, ranging from vector quantization, optimal control, to inverse problems, as well as information integration and multimodal data analysis, especially from X-ray data sources. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Judy. Hi, everyone. So I'll try to also share a few slides. So yeah, as Judy was mentioning, I am Wendy. I'm currently a computational mathematician in Argonne National Lab with joint appointment between the Mathematics and Computer Science Division and X-ray Science Division. So my career path comparing to Sarah's is rather much more boring. I got my PhD in applied math in 2013 in George Mason University back in DC. And then since 2013, right after PhD, I joined Argonne as a postdoc in the MCS division. So since then, I've been just working on similar problems, but in a much wider range of applications, getting into different steps into the career level. So the Argonne, just as many other labs, similar to university setting, we have also some form of not exact as tenure track, but similar like different level of positions. So 2021, I was assistant and then tenured to a computational mathematician since 2021. So just a quick recap of what Sarah already mentioned about. Argonne is one of the DOE national labs and belong to the part of the Office of Science, which means as some of the other labs, we are doing mostly open science research, so much less restrictions on citizenship status of your personal information. So that's a good thing for many of the international students, which is like me back when I started joining Argonne. Argonne is located near the suburb of Chicago. So also location-wise, it's quite attractive. And as part of my joint appointment is with the X-ray Science Division, which they host the biggest synchrotron radiation facility, which is called Advanced Photon Source. It's this big ring-shaped facility where, because of the physics, etc., it has this ring shape to generate the very, very high energy X-ray source to do the experiments from all over the world for the scientists. So many of my problems are actually from there. So as I guess a quick at this point, it's quick to just getting into a little bit detail of my career path. So I was a applied mathematician by training when I was at PhD graduate school. So my background is in actually developing general purpose optimization algorithms. I have no idea what is X-ray science or imaging problems, but that was a project when I joined Argonne as a postdoc. So since then, I've been exposed to the X-ray imaging science and then find out there are a lot of problems there, which as a applied mathematician or algorithm developer can contribute. And so I was promoted as a full-time staff with 50% affiliation with the X-ray science division. That's where most of the applications are from. So a little bit, I guess, getting to the research part, which will give a highlight of what I do. So my background again is in optimization, which is simply speaking, is just to minimize or maximize some functions which you desire to get the extreme value of it. So if it is what we call convex function, which has the minimum point, we're minimizing it or maximize some of the function. For example, the most used example would be the profit, right? Maximize the profit or minimize the labor effort. So that's what optimization do. But in the real topic, it's much more complicated than that because not every function behaves like this nice way. So what the biggest topic of my research is really making advantage of the more information from the data itself. So one thing is to utilize the multimodal data information to improve the scientific discovery. So again, my background is in this optimization, trying to minimize some function. So one biggest topic in optimization is inverse problems, which we have some observations and which we are trying to use this observation to infer some of the knowledge we are trying to recover. So in normal case, if we just look at the problem of one data set we have, it's often not enough information, which means from an optimization perspective, there are just many different good solutions, and how to quantify which one is better and how to quantify which one is actually closer to the true solution we're looking for. This is a hard problem. So there are many different ways to make this problem easier. And what I'm looking into is actually to bring in the different data modalities corresponding to the different experiments or different physics to couple them together and regularize them to each other. So hopefully to get a better answer. So one example is illustrated here. So we can consider this ring shape as a sample, which can be any type of sample, biosample, materials, etc. And then we have the light comes in, and then on these two different ends, downstream of the light or perpendicular to the light. There are two different detectors which actually detecting different data sets corresponding to different physics. So one topic I'm heavily involved is actually how do we combine these different data sets with the similar common goal to recover this sample information to get a better answer. So it involves actually a big pipeline of work, starting from the modeling, mathematical modeling. How do we translate basically the physics language into the mathematical function? And then with the function, how can we find the common link between these different, what we call modalities? And then eventually we'll have some objective function or optimization problems we can minimize. And that step, how do we minimize the function using the numerical method? That's the next step. So there are a lot of different areas involved, which is also the skill set of some mathematical topics I'm heavily involved, including numerical methods, of course, optimization, algorithm development, and then mathematical modeling. And the and now, because of the problem, is more and more getting into the reality, which we also consider noise, etc. So a lot of statistics and the probabilistic theory, and then on top of it, some of you might have heard of the words like uncertain quantifications, all based on some statistics we can try to utilize to give not just a fixed or what we call deterministic result, which we say, oh, this is what it should be, and also give a confidence level on the solution, like how confident we are about this solution quality. So that's part of the whole pipeline work about this data analysis using either single modality or multimodal data set. So then we ended up with this big objective function, which we are trying to minimize. So this is from a modeling perspective. Another part of my work is so another just an example, quickly give you an idea of what we do at National Lab for this particular setting, coupling the mathematics and the X-ray imaging sciences. So we have doing the experiment, getting the data, analyzing the data, sure. But then the data has a lot of error, not just a noise, but error from the experimental setting, which corresponding to like vibration or some of the thermal drift from the experimental hardware configuration. So instead of reduce this error from the experimental perspective, can we actually calibrate it from a numerical perspective? So that's ended up as a mathematical modeling question. How do we model this configuration parameters into a mathematical formulation and then to be able to calibrate from that perspective? So that's another topic. And another thing we do is, so now we have this big optimization problem we are trying to solve. It's big because many of the real life practical life applications are very, very big in terms of large scale, large data set, large unknown parameter dimensions. So what we are trying to do is, one way you have the supercomputer, big computer to run the big problems on it, but not everybody has access to it. So we want to solve it from a numerical perspective. And the biggest idea we are trying to approach is from a hierarchical perspective, that many of these problems have a inherent hierarchical structure, and then the lower of the fidelity, lower of the resolution corresponding to the lower cost. So the idea is, can we use this hierarchical structure to get the most of the computational cost spent on the cheaper to evaluate surrogate or representations, and then interpolate the solution back to whatever the high fidelity, high resolution we desire to actually achieve. So in the end, the computational cost is saved, but the accuracy of the data analysis quality is not sacrificed. So this is just one idea of how we use this hierarchical structure information, where we have the fine level model we are trying to reconstruct, we are trying to analyze, and then we go down a level to the coarser model, which normally corresponding to the lower fidelity or lower resolution or lower accuracy or precision, where we can get a rough idea what the solution should be, and then solve it right there, and then predict the solution back to the fine level or fine fidelity of the design. So some of the applications there also arising from this imaging X-ray science area, which is the reconstruction problem, and also some of the other type of inverse problems can be rather complicated, like the calcography, where we solve the problem based on also inverse problem setting, but it's nonlinear, non-convex, so much more complicated in reality as well. So yeah, this is basically the mostly about research highlight what we do at Argonne National Lab as what I do mostly. So in a short, the the National Lab setting is very attractive to me because as an applied mathematician, I want to apply my skill set to real applications. So we have many easy access to real world applications. X-ray of course is one main topic, but I also get involved in environmental science applications, material design applications, and some high energy physics applications, etc. So it's a very highly interdisciplinary and collaborative environment. And as Sarah mentioned, as many of these national labs shared, the common feature is we do have opportunities for students and postgraduate internships. So at Argonne, in particular in the math, under the math umbrella, we have the Gibbons Associate, which is corresponding mainly targeted on the applied math major, and the WG Cody Associate for the computer science major. And these two are for the graduate students, mostly PhD students, but they are also undergraduate internship opportunities. And then for the postdocs, we have many project-based postdoc opportunities, but also this named fellowship opportunities opening to everybody and based on your own research proposal ideas, and very selective but very prestigious type of named fellowships. So yeah, that's pretty much what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So next up, we have Dr. Emilie Purvine. She is a chief data scientist and team lead for complex data models at Pacific Northwest National Lab. Her academic background is in pure math with a bachelor degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and a PhD from Rutgers University. Her research since she joined the PNNL in 2011 has focused on applications of combinatorics and computational topology, together with theoretical advances needed to support the applications. Her current research uses complex mathematical models to develop cyber analytics, study machine learning models for interpretability, and enhance digital biosecurity. Sorry for the really bad pronunciation. Thank you, Emilie.
Thank you, Judy, for that introduction. I'll start out by talking about how I got here, and I think it's important for folks to see a lot of different career paths, so I'm really glad that you're doing this kind of panel because everybody's got a little bit of a different path. So I always start this out by saying that my path was very linear and perhaps too linear. Not that I regret anything, but that if you don't go through very linear steps and not have a lot of tangents or different paths walked down and backtrack and whatnot. All those paths are great too. Like it's good to try out different things. I got lucky that most of the things that I tried out I liked and I kept doing. But that's not always the case, and you'll find your way. So as an undergraduate student, when I first started, I was expecting to be a high school math teacher. I had really good math teachers in high school, and I thought, I want to inspire students too. But as I got into the early undergrad courses, the math courses just kept being more and more exciting to me, and the education courses not as exciting. And so I switched my major to just pure math. And I figured, if I still want to be a teacher after I get an undergraduate degree, I can go get a master's in education, math education, and I'll be able to do that. But that's not what I did. I did a couple summer programs for women in math, which were fantastic. Unfortunately, no longer running, but finding community of similar people, whether that's through an REU or through things like this, or small get-togethers at larger conferences for like AWM receptions, things like that. It's great to find a cohort and community, and so that's what that summer math program, or the 2 summer math programs, did for me, was get me introduced into a community of people that are similar to me. And then I also did a study abroad program. I did the Budapest Semesters in Math program, which was for somebody like me, love to travel, and it was a great way to get to see the world, but not sacrifice my math major. I could still do all my math classes. I also did some undergraduate research through not a summer REU, but a research experience at University of Wisconsin during the school year. Somehow I dug up a picture of me from over probably almost 20 years ago, doing research. Man, those computers are big. And that was really fun to kind of see what research is like at that level. I also was able to do an internship with a small government contractor. I'll just say that I got that internship through the summer math program. There was a speaker at one of the summer math programs I did that said, hey, I work at this company. It's a small company. This is the kind of stuff we do. If you're interested in an internship, let me know. And so me and one other participant in that program wrote her an email and said, hey, we're interested. And it was like, okay, come on down. And so like using those connections, I used to think that using those kinds of connections was like cheating, but that's not true. It's the way you get in. It's the way you make connections to get into places. So if you make connections and people invite you to do something, do it. It's not cheating. It's the way that it works. You got to get to know people. And sometimes that's putting in an application to a big giant pool. And sometimes that's using the people that you know to get into places. So I did that small internship and really enjoyed it. I got to see how I could use pure math that I really enjoyed doing for the purposes of cool government problems. And so previous to that, I didn't really know what kind of a career I wanted. And after that, I thought, yeah, going into government research sounds really pretty cool. But I didn't know about national labs at the time. So when I went to graduate school, I planned to not work in academia. I planned to work in some sort of government field. But I also chose to do pure math and not applied. Even knowing that I wanted to go into some application space, I chose to do pure math because that's what I liked. I liked doing combinatorics and graphs and enumerative combinatorics, things like that. And so I figured, well, if I go into applied math, then I have to do one application forever, and that's not what I want to do. If you got a broad education in a bunch of different math areas, I could do a lot of different applications, and that's basically how it worked out. I will say that if I do have any regrets with my education, at grad school, it would be I didn't probably take as much breadth as I could have or should have for the kind of career that I wanted. It's turned out fine for me, but if you're in it and you're thinking about going into a kind of career like this, it's great to get a good broad base of math courses because you never know. I have a slide near the end. You never know what kind of math you're going to use. So as a grad student, I applied and got a fellowship with the Department of Homeland Security, which gave me internship opportunities at PNNL, and I haven't left. So I did a couple summer internships. I got a postdoc here in the summer of 2011, and I've transitioned to a staff. Quite a path and a lot of fun. And yeah, it's my way and not everybody's way to get where I got to. All right, just a few more things. So I don't really have to background, but I'll point out that PNNL is up here in the Northwest. The main campus is in Eastern Washington, and I am out in the Seattle office, which is a smaller office, but growing presence out here. PNNL is about, as all the other national laboratories are, about scientific discovery and science. We do a lot of it for national security and for sustainable energy applications, but it's also a broad variety of applications beyond that as well. Data science is where I sit in the math, stats, and data science group. We do big scale computing, big data analysis, visualization, algorithm development. There's a lot of work in artificial intelligence and machine learning applied to different kinds of computational problems and modeling different kinds of data. If you're looking for internship opportunities here at PNNL, the link is at the bottom, careers.pnnl.gov. There's always openings every summer, and we love our interns. So our 4 research directorates here at PNNL are in national security, earth and biological sciences, energy, environment, physical and computational sciences, and we have opportunities at all levels. So internships, research as a PhD student, as I think Sarah mentioned, you can have a joint advisor through the lab and through your university. There's also postdoc positions, and also we have postgraduate positions, so post-bachelors and post-masters in addition to postdocs. Same concept, but you have a bachelor's degree, 2-year position to kind of figure out if that's what you like, whether you want to go to grad school after that or convert to a full-time scientist. So every level we have opportunities, and of course full-time staff scientists as well. So a while back I was doing this kind of a presentation and I asked my colleagues, like, what kind of math do you use here in your job? And this is what I got. Lots and lots of things. So if you're seeing all these kinds of presentations and thinking, well, that's not kind of what I want to do. That's not what I like to do. I like to do this other kind of math. If it's on this list, somebody here does it. And probably somebody at all the other national labs does it. Even category theory, like that's, the mathematicians set theory, super, super obscure math, we're doing it here. So all are welcome. Any kind of math has a place here. But also I'll point out programming. It's not math, but it's very, very important. I even bolded Python. So much of our data science work is done in Python now, but there's a lot of other languages that people use here at PNNL and in the lab complex. So I'll close with just a few things because I feel like in my 14 years here, I've done a lot of different things. So I'll just mention a few. The theme of my work is complex interconnected systems and modeling complex interconnected systems. So a lot of graph and hypergraph modeling. So these are systems of entities and relationships, either pairwise or multi-way relationships among entities. So these could be biological systems like proteins and interactions between proteins. They could be social systems. They could be computer networks, power grids, all kinds of things have this structure of objects and relationships between objects. So graphs and hypergraphs is huge for me. Topological data analysis is another field where you model your data as a topological space, and then you look at what's the shape of that space and what does the shape of that space tell me about the system and how things are related to each other. So clustering is a form of topological data analysis, but there's other methods that people look at to kind of understand the shape of high-dimensional data. More recently, over in the last 5-ish years, looking at the math of machine learning. So how do these big models that are answering any question that you might have in a chatbot kind of scenario, how do they work and how can we make them better? How can we make them more understandable and work with us to make our analytics better, stronger, faster? Applications in cyber network analysis, computational biology, and natural language. Those are the big ones that I'm working on right now, but I've done work in power grid and some other knowledge modeling, things like that as well. So that's me and PNNL in a nutshell. I will stop my sharing and turn it back over.
Thank you. Last but not least, we have Ulrike Meier Young. Ulrike leads the Mathematical Algorithm and Computing Group in the Center for Applied Scientific Computing at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. She is a software developer for the high-performance servers library HyPray, I think that's how you pronounce it, maybe. Her research interests are numerical algorithms, particularly iterative linear system solvers and algebraic multigrid methods, high-performance computing, parallel algorithms, performance evaluation, and scientific software design. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Let me share my slides. All right. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. I find it really exciting, and I'm also really enjoyed the previous presentations. So thank you for that. So let me just get started. So first of all, I had my career in high performance computing, and I'd first give you a quick career overview, and then I go more into the details. So the recurring topic of my career was really mathematical algorithms and their software implementation on high performance computers. So that's something I really learned to enjoy. And of course, this is also required to go along with architectures that keep changing over the years. And here I put up the top 500 supercomputing curve, where you can see here in the middle that shows you the performance, and you can see it started in the 1990s, where the best performing computer was less than 100 gigaflops, and now we are up to 1 exaflop added this myself. And of course, our current number one computer is El Capitan, which is at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, it's a third exascale computer. I know the first one was Frontier at Oak Ridge, and then Argonne also has Aurora. So that's one thing I was doing. I'll talk more about this. But the other thing that has changed throughout the years was that I got increasing leadership responsibilities. Starting with individual research, then I started to lead teams and groups of varying sizes. And then finally, I guess my biggest leadership responsibility was that I led a large project of about 50 to 60 people from 11 different institutions with an up to $5 million per year budget in the exascale computing project. So the exascale computing project was a really exciting project at the DOE project, where they basically wanted to create an exascale computer. And of course, they had applications people, software developers, hardware vendors, everybody was involved. So there were more than 3,000 people involved trying to make this happen and create also applications that were able to run on these exascale computers. And then on top of it, I was more part on the software side trying to develop Hyper, that was our library. But then also for this particular project was really focused on trying to make sure that all these math libraries would work well together when they're used by the applications to be able to actually generate something. So that's pretty much all I want to say about this. And then I'm going to talk more about the other parts of my career. So let me start at the beginning, in the early days. So my favorite subject in school was math, and I'm assuming many of you had that too, and maybe some of you hated math. And so because of that, of course, when I decided to study, and I'm from Germany originally, so that's where I grew up and also went to school, etc. I went to the Ruhr University in Bochum. And of course, at first I had no clue really what it is I liked about math until I started to take some classes. And I realized I got really interested in numerical math and programming. And even so that university did not have a computer science or informatics department at that time, it was really new at that time. They do have now all these things, but at that time they didn't. They did have a computation center, and I was lucky to get a job as a student helper at the computation center, which was exciting. And then something really exciting happened, and that was in 1982, so a long time ago for most of you. Were probably not born at that time, but anyway. The university acquired a Cyber 205 vector computer, which is way back, was a really new thing, exciting thing, like a parallel type computer. And my boss at the computation center, the deputy director, said, you should do something with on this computer, because these kind of computers will be the future. And so I did. I wrote my diploma thesis on parallel algorithms for ordinary differential equations. And so, and then I graduated in 1983 with a diploma in math, which is equivalent to a master's degree here. And because I had this great experience working on a vector computer, I was able to get a job at the Jülich Research Center, which is actually very similar, like a national center like we've been talking about. It's also a big center, which has all different kinds of institutions. And I got a job at the mathematics group at the Central Institute for Applied Mathematics inside that huge center. And they had acquired a Cray XMP, which is another vector computer. And so I started to learn to explore linear solvers on this computer. And one thing we actually did, because I was really early, and by the way, I was the only woman in that group at that time, our group leader always took us after lunch to the library once a week to make sure that we would learn about the new things that were coming out. And so I think that's a good practice to learn. Make sure you keep learning about new developments, because that's important. So then one thing that happened as I was studying about these linear solvers, I was doing literary searches and I was reading papers, and I realized that one of these papers, which had a great algorithm in it, had some issue with one of the theorems, and there seemed to be a mistake in it, and I was actually able to develop a counterexample, which clearly proved the theorem was wrong. And so I ended up, one of the authors, Ahmed Sami, was from the University of Illinois, was actually an invited speaker at a conference in Oxford I was going to. And so so I went to him and asked him about this and talked to him about this. And he was really nice. He took my information and he took my counterexample and said he was going to let me know once he gets back to the US if I'm right or what's going to happen. And I thought I would never hear from him again, but because he's famous and I'm nobody. But on the contrary, 2 months later, I got a letter from him basically saying, yes, you were right. They corrected the theorem. They sent the correction to the journal. They even mentioned my name. And then he told me that they actually started this great center at the University of Illinois. And if I were interested, I could apply for like some kind of visitor position or something. So I did. It was very scary, but I did, and I received an offer to go there for 1 year as an exchange visitor. Here you can see a picture of the lab, the building where we were at, Talbot Lab, at the University of Illinois, the Manor Champaign, and became a visitor and later staff member. I ended up staying there for a long time, actually, and worked there at the center. And they had this exciting project where they're basically building a new parallel computer that consisted out of different clusters, which had already 8 process elements and a hierarchical memory with caches and a global memory. And they were putting 4 of these together and put a global memory on top. Again, this was really a new hierarchical type of memory, which nowadays you probably have a chip of that in your laptop, but at that time it was super exciting. And so I did also developed parallel matrix algorithms on this kind of machine at that time. And it was a really great place, which had lots of visitors, which unfortunately died in 1993 due to funding. The Aligned FX8, the Aligned company went bankrupt, and that was unfortunately our main funding source. And so the center ended. Now, one thing I had done, so in 1987, I started a PhD in computer science as I was there. And so I didn't have to pay tuition as an employee of the university. And that whole ending of the center helped me to finish my PhD. So that was a good thing. So I got my PhD in computer science in 1995, and it was still on numerical math, because in numerical math in Illinois is actually in the computer science department, not in the math department. So in 1995, I left Illinois because I'd gotten married in the meantime, and we had one of these kids, and then I took a break basically because of these 2 guys. In 1997, so I was really realizing I wasn't cut out for a stay-at-home mom. And right at that time, when I was really getting ready to trying to do something with my PhD, I received an email from Steve Ashby at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, who had gotten a lot of funding and said, hey, Ulrike, are you out there? He still knew me from Illinois, where he actually graduated. Why don't you come and check us out? And so I did. And he was nice enough to give me a part-time job, which was great. So I came. So my next job was at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So here you can see a picture of the lab. It's been around. It has 8,200 employees. It does have a big annual budget. The current director is Kim Budia. That was the very first woman to lead a national lab. I know Sandia now has a woman director too, but Kim was the first. And one thing there, it's important to them are these R&D 100 awards, which they also call them the Oscars of Innovation, which basically are for special technologies or tools that are considered. It's an international award. Anyway, so what does Lawrence Livermore National Lab does a lot of different things, not just fusion. I mean, some people jokingly say LLNL stands for lasers, nothing but lasers. Well, that's not true. So you see here a lot of other things they're doing. And of course, I'm in the computing area, in the computing department. So when I joined the Center for Applied Scientific Computing at Lawrence Livermore, one of the things Lawrence Livermore does, it has a strong history of high-performance computing with various computers. We're high up on supercomputing top 500 list. I mean, you just heard about LCAP. And it was just as exciting as CSRD had been. So I joined the Scalable Linear Solvers and Hyper project, which was led by Rob Falgu. And Hyper is a parallel linear solvers library that focuses on scalable solvers and preconditioners, particularly multi-grid methods. And I just wanted to thank Wendy for bringing up this multi-level image reconstruction picture, which has really the most important components of multi-grid methods in it. It's the basic idea, because I don't have a figure on that one. So, okay. So why are linear system solvers so important? I mentioned them before. Well, linear systems occur in many scientific applications, and here you do have a variety of different ones. As you can see, these are some of them where we have used hyper to solve things. So writing these things is really exciting. And of course, they're used for simulations of physical, chemical, biological phenomena. And generally, you have to solve very, very large systems that are sparse, to be able to solve these applications. And so specifically, Hyper does have some very interesting interfaces. I'm not going to get into that. And it focuses on scalable solvers. And yes, we got one of these cool R&D 100 awards, which really had some Oscar-type reception, which was exciting. But what does scalable mean? So here's like a picture of a scalable method down here. Basically, when you have a problem that you want to scale up, like you have a problem, you scale up to 100 times, and now you have a machine which gives you 100 processing elements or something like that, then you do want to be able to solve the large problem as fast as a small problem as you increase your processing, right? And so multi-grid methods help you to achieve that. Others might not necessarily do this. And here's one of example that was run with Hyper using a more than 1 million cores, where it was solving some diffusion problem on Sequoia, which was one of these old machines that was also on the top 500, and that was using Hypers. And you can see we get some really nice scalability. Okay, so I mentioned before that these computer architectures get more and more complicated, and so that required me to continue to update algorithm and software. That's something I really enjoy doing, actually. And so one of the things is multi-grid methods, they do have a lot of sequential components. So originally when I started, I was actually tasked with writing the first parallel algebraic multi-grid algorithm. Algebraic multi-grid has some additional difficulties. And you had to replace a lot of sequential components with parallel algorithms, so you had to develop new ones. And then, of course, once you do this, you keep improving. Like the very first one was maybe like this, and you saw that was not very scalable, but it was still exciting because at least it was a parallel algebraic multi-grid algorithm that worked on that. So what we ended up doing, we improved it by, it was caused by the coarsening here, we improved it by putting a better coarsening algorithm in there. And so we got an additional improvement, and now it looked much more scalable, but this still wasn't good enough because now it turned out our convergence was suffering. So we ended up having to develop a new interpolation. And so eventually we got something that's very nice. And that's what we also used in that million processor experiment I showed you earlier. But then even after we had figured this out, things got more complicated because new architecture had faster cores, which were much faster than the network, and suddenly communication was a real problem, so we had to work on reducing communication and so on. And then, of course, most recently, all these different exascale computers, they have GPUs. Now, GPUs are kind of very different beasts, and multi-grid methods are not really suitable for GPUs, so that was another challenge we had to deal with. But of course, Hyper is used by all these application codes on exascale computers, so we had to new programming models like special languages to be able to really use the GPUs efficiently. And we also had to develop some new algorithms that were more suitable for this. And down here is actually some experiment we did. This was some problem run by a subsurface application, GEOS, that are using Hyper. This was actually done on Frontier, which is Oak Ridge National Exascale Computer. And so you can see here, as we increase the number of GPUs over here, you see the gray part is the part where the application code, and then the blue and orange parts are using Hyper, like Hyper setup in blue and solve in orange. And you can see we get some pretty nice scalability. And you can also see that linear solvers can take up a huge amount of time of the whole application in this one. So, all right. So now I do want to give you a few words on career advancement before I'm closing. So one thing is ask questions and seek advice. Mentors are very important, so appreciate your mentors. Strategic planning is generally good. And I actually have to share, as I was a group leader, I had a lot of postdocs in my group, and I got a book for postdocs on how to do it right. And I thought, well, I better read this one, even so I was never really a postdoc, to know so I can get good advice. And after I read it, I got really, really depressed because I had done none of the strategic planning that was in there. I just did whatever came along. And then I realized it didn't really matter. I was doing just fine, right? And so I'm saying strategic planning is generally good, but if you're at a point where you haven't done it, don't feel bad. You know, first of all, you can still change it. And second of all, you know, I mean, there are other ways to get along. One thing I did, however, I took opportunities when they came along. So I'm saying take opportunities when they come along. That's important. Also, when you do fail, see it as an opportunity to grow, you know? I mean, don't get into some depressive loop on this one, right? And the other thing is admitting mistakes early will allow you to fix them faster and be more efficient. As a matter of fact, also asking questions is really important, you know, and I know we were told this, but we still didn't ask them because we were too afraid. So don't be afraid asking questions. Then again, if you know what area you really want to pursue, go for it, because I believe if you're really excited about something, you will do much better at it. And then one thing that's really, really important, I mentioned before, is to increase your skill set. And that's also important if you go to a national lab or something. So including communication skills. Giving good presentations is good. Papers, proposals, I mean, even if you want to go for an interview, you want to give a good presentation, right? Writing proposals is important at a national lab because we do have to get funding. So it's and then the other thing that's really important is you need to be flexible. Funding sources change all the time. And so, especially at where I'm at, we really look for people being flexible, people showing that they're able to learn something quickly, that they're able to have a wider range of experience and so on. So. And then here are the current hot topics where you can find funding, apparently, is AI, quantum computing, high-performance computing to some degrees. So unfortunately, solvers, my favorite topic, and so on, isn't really hot right now. So if you do it, you have to figure ways to get artificial intelligence somehow attached to it or something like that. So, and that's basically all I had. I do want to add Sarah. She did such a nice job in talking about all the opportunities you have in national labs, and she did it for all the labs. So really, of course, Livermore also provides internships and all these things, and you can find these when you go to the Lawrence Livermore website. And yes, we're really happy to have them. And the other thing I want to say, if you do want to apply for summer internships, start early. A lot of people that come to me like in February or March, and I'm like, well, it's too late. So I really say start in November, before Christmas, start before then, right? To start looking for those. And that's basically all I had. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing. I think we're on time now, so please join me once again in thanking all our panelists for spending their afternoon with us.